Thank you all so much for joining us. We are going to go ahead and mute everyone just at the beginning, but we will have time for Q&A at the end, so don't be alarmed. We will allow you to unmute yourself so you can ask your questions, but you can feel free to message in the chat throughout the whole time, and we will do Q&A at the end. So we are going to mute you all right now. But again, I wanted to thank everyone. Wanted to mention that we are recording this session, so it's already in record. None of you are on camera, but if you decide to be on camera, we would love to see your smiling faces. And we will have the program available to watch after for any people who aren't available to join tonight. This is the first program in our brand new Recharge Your Public Health Career series. So be on the lookout for more information. We're going to have additional programs in the spring. We'll have a session in January, March, and May of 2022, and we're really excited about it. So keep an eye on your email. We'll also have info on social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. More on that later, but I want to make sure we have time and get over to Marissa. So please join me in welcoming fellow Rollins alumna, Marissa McCool, and her coaching business. Marissa graduated in 2015 from the Global Health Department. After Rollins, she immediately secured an ORISE fellowship at CDC, everyone's favorite, and then a leadership position with UC Berkeley's School of Public Health in the Wallace Center for Maternal and Child Health. She really loved that work, but quickly found herself feeling stressed, overly anxious, generally pretty unhappy with the life, even though she has amazing accomplishments thus far. And so she started working with a life coach. After a few months, she began to find that balance that she felt that she was lacking. And she felt so transformed by this decision that she ultimately pursued becoming a certified coach herself. She has now started McCool Consulting in February of this year and plans to leave UC Berkeley to run her own business by the end of this year. Not sure if you've accomplished that or if that's coming.
I've already left.
You did that. Yes. Okay. So she has gone and launched her full business. Her website we'll share later, but she also has a great podcast. You can listen to it on Apple or on Spotify. And there are over 20 episodes. I've listened to a couple myself, so make sure you give them a listen. The Live Productivity, I enjoyed that one, and Redefining Rest. Those were really eye-opening, and she releases new episodes each Monday. I will let Marissa share more about her goals, specifically to help people in public health reduce their stress, reframing our expectations, and that's kind of finding the joy in life is what this whole session is about. So before we leap into recharging your public health career, we want to focus on what does rest mean, what does balance in life look like, and how do we kind of change this mindset after being 2 years in a global pandemic where I know all of us are feeling it in one way or another. And especially the public health community. So without further ado, I will pass it over to our friend and fellow alumna, Marissa.
Thanks so much for that warm welcome. I see some familiar faces and names, and I'm really, really excited to be here with you all. I'm going to share my screen. Someone give me a thumbs up or nod. Good. All right.
Looks good.
Okay, so I want to start off with just a few housekeeping things. One is, I would love for everyone to just decide right now if they are going to be present in this presentation. And what I mean by that is oftentimes we sign up for a webinar and then the webinar comes and we feel like we still have to get our emails done or we have to cook dinner, and we're kind of split in our focus areas. And definitely those are things that you might need to get done, and that's totally fine. But when we start to think, oh, I can do both, we're not being productive and we're not being restful. So I'd encourage you to decide how you're going to honor yourself today. There's clearly something inside of you that signed up for this, whether it's you want more rest or you're struggling with productivity. And so if you want to honor that, I encourage you to put down your phone, shut off your email, and just be present here today. And if you want to honor the part that feels like you have other things you want to focus on, this is being recorded and you can always come back to it at a time you're more able to be focused. I also want to say this is a long debate about the format of presentations and presenters. And I've seen some recent conversations on LinkedIn from public health folks about this. So I want to address this. I try the best I can, and by no means am I perfect, to present in a way that's accessible to all folks, whether it's based on different learning styles or accommodation needs. So I will be doing my best to share what's on the screen. And for those of you who feel strongly that presenters shouldn't read what's on the screen, I would just encourage you, if you notice you're having thoughts about that, to ask yourself, if you knew that the purpose of it being presented this way was to help someone else learn the material, how would that change your perspective? And then the last thing is, what I'm sharing today is just an offer. It's a different perspective. It's a challenge of your brain and how to think about these concepts. You can take it or leave it. If it really resonates, that's great. And I encourage you to run with it. If you find yourself feeling resistant and not really understanding or not agreeing, that's totally fine. And if you fall anywhere in the spectrum, that's also fine. And as we go through talking today, I would just encourage you, no matter where you are in that spectrum, to put yourself into a curious mind. Just drop into curiosity. You don't have to agree and you don't have to take this on, but can you get curious about it? There is a workbook that I have provided the team that I think they either have already shared out or will share out. So if you find this really useful, or if you're not sure and want to kind of get more curious, it's a workbook that you can apply some of these concepts and take it further. So I want to start briefly. Some folks shared where you are currently physically, but in the chat box, if you're able to, if you're not able to type in the chat, don't worry. If you want to put what year you graduated, just so we know who's in the room. Let's see. I'll try to read as many as I can. 2010, 19, 14, 17, 2009, 17, 2000, 21, 2005, 2016, 2013, 2001. Wow, what a diverse range of graduates. Okay, this is great. I love this. I love to see so many folks with varying years of experience in the field since graduating with their degree. Thank you all for those of you who shared. So what are some definitions of rest? Again, if you're able to put this in the chat, you're welcome to. If you're not able to, that's totally okay. And just think about it on your own. But I want you to think about, what are some examples of rest that you actually get? Not ideal examples that you aspire to but don't really get, but what are some examples of rest that you find yourself being able to give yourself? If folks feel comfortable and are able to put some in the chat, I'll try to read some out and see what folks, maybe everyone's like, oh, it's a pandemic, I haven't rested in 2 years. Reading a chapter of book, watching Netflix. Yeah, I think many of us can relate. Listening to an audiobook or even a podcast, going on a walk, face mask, boundaries, sleeping. Yeah, reading. Great. Thanks for everyone who shared. Sitting in front of a fire. These are great. So you can keep thinking of it. What's going to come up on the screen here are 6 sticky notes. And they say, going to the spa, getting enough sleep, going on vacation travel, meditating, yoga, watching TV. Some of these were things you all shared. Some of them were not. Maybe you do think of them as rest, or maybe they're just more marketed to us as rest. But these are kind of, I think, the kind of mainstream media or norms around what we think about when we talk about rest. So I want you to ponder this. You don't have to agree, but just open your mind to get curious. What if rest was not an action or set of actions? What if rest was a state of mind? What if rest is available to you no matter what actions you're taking? Just ponder that. Let's do the same thing for productivity definitions. So think about how you define productivity. What counts as productivity in your mind? And if you're able to put some in the chat, I'll read them out loud. If you're not able to, totally fine. But let's see, checking things off my to-do list. Yep, I think that's pretty shared. completing planned tasks, feeling accomplished. Rest. Golda, I love that. Did you sneak into my presentation earlier today? Meeting deadlines and deliverables. Yeah, very, very common. Getting things done. To-do list, plan tasks, deadlines, deliverables. Yeah. So you can keep thinking about it. Again, 6 sticky notes coming on the screen, and they say, getting everything on the to-do list done, finishing a big project on time, getting all your work done early, making time for all the things, right? The kids, the working out, the work, working out 5 days a week, finishing all the household chores, right? These are some common things we think about when we think about being productive. Again, I just want you to ponder, what if productivity does not really exist in the world? What if productivity is a belief system, is a construct that humans made up that now is preventing us from getting things done efficiently and effectively? Just think about that, chew on that a little bit. So here are some common beliefs about rest and productivity we have. That being productive will help me feel relaxed and accomplished. That being productive feels good. That rest helps me refuel and recharge. These all sound reasonable, right? Maybe even sound familiar, maybe harmless. What I'm going to walk through in the next few slides is each of these a little more in detail and show how these beliefs, whether you hold them consciously, meaning you think them on purpose, or unconsciously, meaning they're thoughts you have in your brain, beliefs, but you're not really thinking of them consciously, result in us not only not resting and burning out, but having you continue to believe that it's out of your control to change your experience with rest and productivity. So the first one, being productive will help me feel relaxed and accomplished. We have this vision, me too, like Sunday, I get all my chores done and to-do lists, and I'll feel so relaxed in the evening and have downtime and feel so good going into the week. Or like on Monday, look at my calendar, I have a vision, if I get everything done I plan to get done, then I'll feel so accomplished and the weekend will feel so good. And that sounds so nice and so pleasant, but we are believing that being productive will make us feel a certain way. And that is part of the reason many of us are burning out. And why is that? Being productive does not create your feelings. How is it that you only feel accomplished if you get all your work done, finish the laundry, cook the dinner, but you have a partner who feels accomplished and great just after finishing a crossword puzzle? How is it that you feel proud of what you've gotten done if you get all 10 things on your to-do list done, but you have a friend who can get only 2 out of 10 things done and feel great? How is it that when you tell your team member you didn't get much done this week because you had so many meetings and you feel really overwhelmed and behind and stressed, and they say, oh yeah, I had a ton of meetings too, I didn't get much done, but they do not care, they do not seem stressed, they are not worried about it? This is because the amount of things we do or do not do, the types of tasks we do or do not create how we feel. You can decide to do nothing and feel great. I'm sure we've all had this experience where we decide on purpose, Saturday, I'm not going to do anything, and you feel great about it. You love it. You can also decide to get a lot done and feel great, or to get a lot done and feel terrible, right? How many of us have done that? We get our whole to-do list done and then we still feel terrible because we didn't do enough. We've all had both these experiences to some degree or another. When you believe that productivity is what delivers your feeling, what happens? When 5 p.m. runs around and you don't magically feel accomplished, you tell yourself you didn't get enough done, so you work until 8. When Friday hits and you don't feel relaxed, you tell yourself you didn't get enough done, you have to do house chores, and that's the reason you're stressed and you didn't get to do it this week because you didn't get enough done. You are burning yourself out by continuing to seek contentment and pride and happiness and relaxation outside of yourself from your to-do list and from productivity. And that's partly because of our other belief that being productive feels good. Our unconscious beliefs, our unexamined rationale, right? Like we have this belief, we don't really look at it, we don't question it. For that believing productivity feels good is essentially because we think intrinsically getting a lot done feels good, but that's just how we're designed. It's just the way it is. But that isn't true. Productivity doesn't feel good because getting stuff done delivers that to you. It's because when you get stuff done, you're finally nice to yourself. When you get everything on your to-do list done, you give yourself a mental and emotional break finally. You stop telling yourself you need to do more. Stop telling yourself you didn't do enough. It's not because productivity delivered those feelings. It's because of the change in the thoughts in your brain. It's because of the change in the way in which you are talking to yourself about yourself. Here's the thing. You don't have to get things done or wait until you get things done to do that, to change how you talk to yourself, to change how you talk about yourself and what you're doing. You can give yourself a mental and emotional break whenever you want. You never have to tell yourself you need to get more done or you didn't do enough. You can always decide to tell yourself you're proud of what you've done and you feel accomplished no matter how many things you get done. When we believe productivity makes us feel good, we feel good for a short amount of time after getting enough done, because there's a short period our brains are no longer telling us we didn't do enough and being mean to ourselves, and it quiets a little bit, and that feels good. But then a little time passes, not much at all, and our brain gets back to it. The pattern of telling ourselves you need to do more, you need to get more done, and the cycle starts all over. When you really detach this and you stop believing productivity will make you feel good, then you're able to create the feelings of contentment and pride and relaxation for yourself with the way you're thinking and talking to yourself. And it doesn't matter how much you do. And we'll get to a little bit more about that in a second. And then another belief we have, rest helps us refuel and recharge ourselves. So this belief implies that rest comes after exertion, after being productive. It implies that the purpose of rest is to bounce back from the exhaustion of getting work done. And that it also is to prepare to do more work. But the only reason we are exhausted from trying to be productive is because we believe we have to be productive to feel good. So we're constantly being that drill sergeant in our head to ourselves about getting work done. And while that's happening, we withhold rest from ourselves while we're working and doing all the things. The way society and many of us talk about rest is like we're a hybrid electric car, right? Those cars that run on both gas and electricity. Like once you drive a certain amount of miles, we'll charge you. Like once you work a certain amount, you can get a little bit of rest. And then if you run out of charge because you've been driving for so long, then we'll stop for gas. And the fuel we're using for ourselves isn't love or nourishment or pride or appreciation. It's shame and judgment and dread and anxiety. Rest is not a refuel and recharge. Waiting until we run out of gas to fill up on rest, that is part of the puzzle as to why we are burning out. I want you to just ponder this. And for some of you, this might be hard, like your brain might be struggling with this, and that's totally fine. What if rest was your status quo? What if rest was the priority, not the afterthought? What if you rested more than you were, quote unquote, being the traditional sense of productive? What if you scheduled your rest first? Then maybe we wouldn't need to re-up on rest. Just sit with that. So here are some other things we've been taught about productivity, that these beliefs really are under those other three beliefs that I just went through that sound a little bit more reasonable. These beliefs are hiding under there. Productivity matters more than rest. Productivity comes before rest. Being productive makes you a worthy person. You are valued if you are productive. Productivity is a measure of worth. Now, for some of you, as you're reading this or I'm reading it and you're hearing it, you might be saying, oh, I don't believe those. But how many of us before the pandemic or during on Zoom have not gone to an office holiday party or left work early or taken that staff yoga class or whatever else it may be because you told yourself you have too much to do? You haven't gotten enough time done and you don't have enough time. Isn't that this belief in practice that productivity matters more than rest and that it comes before rest? And this is not to shame, we all do this. So some other things we've been taught about rest. We can only rest once we've accomplished something. Once we rest, then we can be more productive. Rest is not given, it is earned or deserved. Rest is a celebratory or relief act. We have to justify rest. So here's kind of a more structural example. Let's think about paid time off. For jobs that have paid time off, which many of which in public health do, most of the system is set up that you have to work at the organization for a certain amount of time before you can use your paid time off or your vacation time. Isn't that promoting this idea that you can only rest once you have accomplished something, or that it's earned and deserved? So where do some of these beliefs come from? I've kind of alluded to it a little bit. So what's on the screen here is an image of a pink cloud that's supposed to represent an abstract brain and some pegs in it. Some of the context we typically hear the word productivity used is, I was so productive this week. I wasn't very productive. Some of the context we typically hear the word rest used is, you look tired, you should go home and get some rest. Did you get enough rest? Your muscles need time to recover after that workout. Make sure to get some rest tonight. We are taught in many ways, directly and indirectly, that rest is sleep. It's a period of doing nothing only after an intense period of doing something, and it's a rare gift. We are taught that productivity is a binary. You either are productive or you aren't. You either get it all done or you don't. You either got enough done or you didn't. And our beliefs, our unconscious beliefs about rest and productivity come from all around us. So let's talk about how we internalize some of these beliefs. So on the screen here is an illustration of a brain, and it has kind of lines coming out of it, pointing to different areas we internalize or hear messages from: school, parents, religion, media, books, oppressive systems, and there's many, many others. That's just an example. But we get thousands of messages that our brains have internalized as our own thoughts, our own beliefs, and truths, quite frankly. Our brains are designed, right, to organize and process information for efficiency. Our brains categorize things, right? We delegate some of the things we've seen or learned many times to what's called the lower brain, so we don't have to think about it consciously. A lot of this is for energy savings. Like, imagine if every time we saw something, we had to rethink about it consciously. We wouldn't get much done, we'd be exhausted. So the brain is designed to do that so we can keep moving as a species and get stuff done, which is useful. But the way it's not useful is we often unintentionally adapt unhelpful beliefs that we pick up from around us. So for example, if you hear the message, or if I said to you, you're an unworthy person if you don't get everything done on your to-do list, most of you would probably say, no, that's not true. We would scoff if it's like the headline of a newspaper. But if we hear messages or see headlines of articles that say things like how to get more done in less time, how to balance it all, how to be a working mom, many of us might not scoff and might even read those articles. And I'm not saying what's in those articles are bad or not useful. I'm just saying, seeing that and seeing these messages about prioritizing productivity and rest coming second, we internalize that. When we hear our coworkers talking about how they didn't get enough done, we internalize that. When our supervisor questions our request for PTO, we internalize that. We internalize a lot of direct and indirect messages as thoughts. When we hear these messages, when we see these messages, our brain internalizes them. Our brain takes the messages we receive, digests them, speaks them back to us in our own head, in our own voice, in our own way of saying them. Even if you explicitly were taught messages to the contrary, if you grew up in a home full of healers who promoted rest, you still absorb these unhelpful messages about productivity and rest because they're all around us. And it happens in a very tricky way. So if I asked all of you if you think employees shouldn't be allowed to take breaks throughout the day, you'd probably say no, and that's illegal. And if I asked if staff shouldn't take vacation because it'd burden others on the team, you'd probably say no. But how many of you don't eat lunch or haven't had days where you don't eat lunch because you think you have too much to do? Or you work while you eat? How many of you don't get up to get water because it'll disrupt your work, or wait until you absolutely have to take a break to go to the bathroom because you just have so much to get done? How many of you never take your PTO? Or when you put in a request to take PTO, you think it has to be for a good enough reason, like a wedding, you can't just take a Friday off for no good reason. Or if you take PTO, you worry how much work is going to pile up and you overplan and do everything in advance so no one else has to take anything else on. Or you worry about how much you'll have when you get back from your vacation. All of these actions are driven by our unconscious beliefs about productivity and rest. These internalized messages, these thoughts in our brains, they drive our actions that contribute to burnout and not resting. But the good news is we can undo these beliefs. We can be more conscious about what comes in our brain and more conscious about what we think and what we want to believe. But before we get to doing that, I want to talk about some other areas we get messages from. So what's on the screen here, on the left is an illustration of two people holding up the world, and on the right is an illustration of three people in an office with computers. So this is to represent the field of public health. There's not great illustrations out there besides now a bunch of COVID viruses to represent the field of public health. But we absorb a lot of messages within our own field of public health and on all of our jobs. Many of them cross all of public health, and some are specific to the sector you're in, like government versus private, or the topic area, infectious disease versus reproductive health. Just a few examples, there's a lot more that we internalize. Some of these are direct and some are indirect. We get a lot of messages that in public health, you sacrifice yourself for the greater good of others. I'm sure many of you have felt this during the pandemic. So one example of how this plays out is government agencies that do required deployment and force folks to go on deployment or crisis centers rather than optional or volunteer, or rather than providing incentives or offsetting, vacation time, things like that. In nonprofits, but also this happens in government and academia and whatnot, lots of folks are working the job of 2 to 3 people. And then the organization continues to justify that by saying, well, we need this to run for the community, so you're just going to have to sacrifice. Another area is we get a lot of messages that if you end up working in the for-profit industry, that's not advancing public health and it's going against the mission. How does that impact the decisions we make in our career that may help facilitate more rest for us for whatever reason? Another one is around increasing revenue or maintaining funding. When we see that happen in organizations, but they do not direct those funds towards investing in staff or investing in things that can help staff rest more and be less burnout. This contributes to how we internalize productivity and rest. And even in COVID, right? There's a lot of messages in the media, rightfully so, about the burnout among clinicians and doctors and nurses and the challenges. And that is so rightfully so. I don't want to take anything away from that. But we do internalize when we see a lot of that, but we don't see much acknowledgement about the experience of folks in public health. What do all these messages and many others, I'm sure you can think of many, that we experience in public health, how do we internalize those around rest and productivity? Because how we internalize those beliefs and those experiences drive our future actions. And now I want to talk a little bit about how the messages received from oppressive systems impact our thinking about rest and productivity. So what's on the screen is a picture of a Black person with sticky notes all over them and in the background that say things like norms, expectations, society, racism, doubt, things like that. So we do live in a society with the patriarchy, with white supremacy, other forms of oppression, isms, phobias, ableism, ageism, fat phobia, homophobia, transphobia, right? These systems send messages to everyone that rest is not given, it is deserved and earned. And they send messages that for some, rest is automatically earned and deserved. And for others, it is not. And for others, you have to earn rest, and it's going to be harder. And that you have to prove something to the world about your ability or worth or value to get rest. And maybe not just for yourself, maybe on behalf of your family or whole community. The concept, as we think about and play out being productive as we know it in our society today and culture in modern day, is often, intentionally or unintentionally, used as a capitalistic tool. This tool leverages messages of proving individual worth from these oppressive systems in order to keep some people producing high value outcomes for others while producing stress and burnout for themselves. So one example I think many of us are familiar with is the racial and gendered pay gaps, right? We know folks of color, women, trans, non-binary folks get paid less for the same work. But they are also messaged to that in order to make the same or more than their white cis male counterparts, they have to work harder and work more than them. And they get these messages directly and indirectly. And those are internalized and they drive overworking and withholding rest. An example in public health, although there are many, is recently, if you're familiar with the Public Health Win study, they found that in state health departments, women make up 72% of positions, but experience lower odds of holding executive leadership positions. Same study also found that more white employees compared to their colleagues of color believed their supervisor supported their need to balance work and family, where colleagues of color believed they didn't. So in this scenario, how do these messages, how do women and folks of color internalize this messaging about productivity and about rest, about these barriers and experiences? What does it tell our brain? What does it tell our brain what's possible for us? So what's on the screen here is an illustration of a person wearing a mask, and we're going to talk briefly about external versus internal, right? Because some of the things I just touched on were kind of external impacts. So there are systems and structures that exist outside of us, like the patriarchy, like the structure of a health department or nonprofit. The messages, intentionally, unintentionally, direct or indirect, those systems and structures send impact our thinking. We may not be able to change those systems or structures yet, even if we're working on it, but we can change the way we think about productivity and rest, even if they still send out those messages. There are people and decision makers and other factors outside of ourselves we can't control. I mean, I wish we could control other people. Trust me, I've tried, but it doesn't work. But we can manage how we think about the things we cannot control outside of us. And this is where our power is, in the space between what we cannot control and what we think about it. We can work to undo our internalized beliefs about productivity and rest. We can work to change how we think and what we feel when we encounter a barrier for rest those systems or people put up. And we can change how we think and how we feel when we encounter a promotion of burnout those structures amplify. And I would argue we cannot work efficiently and effectively as to our highest level to change these systems and structures if we're burning out, if we are not resting. We have to work to undo our beliefs first, to rest more, to detach from this idea of productivity, delivering our feelings and worth, and change that relationship to really change the systems. So let's understand the impacts of these beliefs a little bit further. So some impacts of our beliefs is many of us spend our lives chasing productivity. Some of you might just starting to be recognizing this. Some of you maybe further in your career have had this realization. We withhold allowing ourselves to feel proud of ourselves, to feel good about ourselves, to feel accomplished. We have been taught directly and indirectly that being productive will make us feel good, make us matter, measure our worthiness, and solve our problems. But that is a lie. What creates the way we feel about ourselves is the way we think about ourselves, what we believe about ourselves. Completing 4 out of 6 things on my to-do list does not create the way I feel. What makes me feel terrible about that is telling myself I didn't do enough. I could complete 4 out of those 6 to-do list things and feel accomplished and feel excited and feel content. Feel completely different. Same scenario, 4 things completed out of 6, different feelings. And this is because actions don't create how we feel. How we think, how we talk to ourselves, what we believe about ourselves creates how we feel. And not only creates our feelings, but drives all our actions and the results in our lives. If we believe being productive, getting everything on our to-do list done, and achieving all external accomplishments will solve our problems, eliminate our negative emotions, prove we're worthy, provide us validation for being who we are, then we are creating the result of constantly chasing something that no one and nothing external to us can provide. What makes us matter and worthy is being born, being a human on earth. Your worth as a human does not change depending on what you do or don't do. That is a lie capitalism and other systems of oppression have fed us. Other impacts of our beliefs is we are constantly telling ourselves, either explicitly or implicitly, that we are not doing enough. The belief we are never or rarely doing enough creates internal shame and judgment and rejection, and that's what feels so terrible. It leads us to doing less of what we truly want to do and more of what we don't want to do. It leads us to withhold rest from ourselves and burnout because we believe we cannot rest until we've done enough. Because we never believe we've done enough, so we don't rest. And I want you to just really challenge this idea of enough. Enough is arbitrary. It's undefined and subjective, and our brain loves to say we're not doing enough. But when we're constantly telling ourselves we're not doing enough, we end up translating the belief from doing to being, from not doing enough to not being enough. When we believe we are not worthy or deserving of rest or celebration or opportunities or jobs or companionships or anything. And as a result, we hustle to prove our worth. We think we can measure productivity as a proxy for our worth. We tell ourselves that if we're productive enough, or once we achieve something extraordinary, then we'll allow ourselves to rest. Then we will believe we are enough. Then we will love ourselves. As a result of this, rest has become an experience of restriction rather than abundance. Rest is treated as a rare commodity that we must be given rather than a state we can create consistently for ourselves. Rest has become an exotic destination rather than an experience in our everyday lives. Rest has become reserved for the deserving and the worthy. What we think will happen if we prioritize rest. So what's on the screen here is kind of a balance scale. There's a tilted line, an arrow pointing down with productivity and an arrow pointing up with rest, indicating increasing rest results in decreasing productivity. And this is what many of us believe, whether we know it or not, and have been told. And I think most of us might believe this on some level, even unconsciously. But I'm going to argue this is not true. So what's coming on the screen above that scale is a big red no sign. I want to pose that rest is the most productive thing you can do. Why? Because it gives your brain and body consistent and stable fuel and energy to be effective and efficient. So when we do this, when we default to our unconscious beliefs about rest and productivity, we create this burnout cycle. So what's on the screen here is there's 5 stages and a circle that connects them all. We start with hustling for our worth because of our beliefs about productivity, which leads to stress, which leads to burnout, which finally leads to rest. And then we repeat because we still have those underlying beliefs. So when we don't prioritize and center rest, this is what we get. And we do have to remember these systems I mentioned, patriarchy, white supremacy, capitalism, et cetera, they send messages around productivity and rest as a tool to ensure some people burn out and quit and don't take up space and more. That's what the system is designed to do, and the messages and the input and the reinforcements we get about productivity as a measure of our worth and rest. Rest as an earned reward contribute to this. So the question is, what do we create as a result of this belief? And do we like what we're creating? A cycle of stress, burnout, finally allowing yourself to rest and repeat. This often looks like working ourselves constantly, not taking lunch breaks, not sleeping enough, pushing ourselves, creating stress, not taking sick days, burning out, finally allowing ourselves to rest, either after we complete something big where we've declared, okay, we're allowed to now, or we just can't keep going. And then it starts all over because we still have these underlying beliefs. Is this an efficient way of not only getting things done, but living your life and enjoying your life? Thoughts and beliefs, the thoughts we have in our head, are not objective truths. We can change them. Many of you have changed your thoughts, right? You think something different now than you did 10 years ago. They're not internal truths or knowings. They're just sentences in our brain. But if they are playing in your brain and you believe them, they do create that result in your life because they drive your feelings and your actions. So I want us to ponder, what would our experience of rest be like if it was different? What it could look like. So here's the same cycle, but different 5 stages. And I will walk through the 5 stages so everyone can know what's on the screen. So the rest cycle looks like the stage 1 is being intentional about rest, which means redefining how you give yourself mental and physical rest and planning your rest in advance. Rest takes prioritization. It's the number 1 priority in your mind. And when you're intentional about rest, the next stage in the cycle is deepening your relationship with yourself. Because when you prioritize rest, you're telling yourself that you and not other people and other things are the priority. You're not aiming to be perfect. You're aiming to be honest with yourself. And this intentionally resting deepens your relationship with yourself because you're in integrity with yourself. You have your own back. You're showing yourself you care for yourself. The outcome of that, stage 3, is creating more joy and fulfillment in all that you do and how you spend your time. And the outcome of that is living purposely and intentionally and not being driven as much by these unconscious beliefs many of us have adopted. Resting from a place of intention rather than reaction is an act of self-love. Redefining rest for yourself means rebuilding your relationship with yourself and starting to treat yourself with love. It means changing how we prioritize our life, shifting from a life where we define ourselves by the hustle to where we define ourselves by the joy and fulfillment we cultivate on purpose. Rest is giving yourself, your mind and your body, what it needs on a consistent basis so you can be present and centered. So same cycle here, but now what you'll see here is tiny, or in what I will describe as tiny blue dots in the line that connects them. So some of you might be thinking, well, how do I get everything done if that's how I focus my life around rest? I just want you to pause and just remind your brain that's the question we are not asking, right? That's the question we've been programmed to ask, and we're working to override that question. What if you ask yourself instead, how and when do we cultivate joy and fulfillment in our lives? How often are we living purposely? How can I live purposely more? What a different feeling that question is. What a different centering that question is. Of course, there are things to get done that you've decided you want to do. Homework, getting a degree, emailing your boss, finishing an evaluation plan, getting the kids to bed, walking the dog, yada, yada, yada. But all those tiny blue dots in the line that connects the 5 stages of rest, centering rest, that's where all that happens. It's not the focus, doesn't define our life, it still gets done. Rest is not a reward for productivity, although we've been taught that. I want to argue that productivity is an outcome of how we practice rest. So redefining rest and productivity, what's on the slide is just a blank whiteboard. Our thoughts are not truths. We can work to undo them. We can work to undo some of the internalization that we have. You're intrinsically worthy just for being born, for being human here on earth. You can do nothing all day and be worthy. So when we redefine rest, and I just want you to take this with you the next couple of weeks to ponder this. Rest is what you give your mind and body. Rest is what you do or do not do on a continuous, but not perfectionist basis. Rest is intentional, not reactive. And rest is personal to you. There's no cookie cutter rest. It's very, very personal to you what you find restful, what rests your mind and body. What happens when we redefine rest is we start to redefine rest for ourselves. And the way we see ourselves changes completely. The way in which we see our contributions to the world changes completely. And how we experience and walk through our life really does transform. And the other big thing that happens when we go from believing rest is scarce and must be given to us to believing rest is abundant and determined by us, that is when we truly take control of our lives. And from there is the best place to determine and go after what you want in life. So in order to redefine rest, and this is what the workbook will help you do, but just to give you an idea, you have to become more intimate with your mind and body. Understanding what your mind and body needs is personal and it's unique to you. You have to get to know your mind. When does it operate best? Under what conditions? What does it enjoy? What drains it? How long of a period does it function optimally and need a break? Same with your body. What is the best fuel for your body? What movements does your body enjoy? How often and how long? When does your body function best? How does your body communicate to you? Rest is personal. What is rest to one person might not be restful to the other. We all know that person who going on a run is restful. And some of us are that person and going on a run is stressful. It's very, very personal and unique. And you get to decide. And once you know what that is and really connect with that, which you already know deep down, you get to be the one to gift it to yourself. You don't have to hustle for it. You don't have to earn it. You don't have to ask permission. Not just once in a while, every day, multiple times a day. Redefining rest means really believing that rest is an everyday occurrence and believing in the benefit of practicing rest. So I want to leave with, what if rest is a mindset? What if rest was a thought or set of thoughts that create an experience of rest? What if the mindset of rest created emotional rest, which drove actions of rest? So I know we have about 8 minutes, I think, for some reflections and questions. And no matter where you are on the spectrum of like, hell yeah to hell no with what I shared, that's totally fine. But I'd love to hear your thoughts from a place of curiosity and reflections or questions. So I'll stop there.
If you all have questions or reflections or thoughts, you're welcome to either type it in the chat and I can read it, or we can call on you and you can feel welcome to take yourself off mute and share as you would like to. Marissa, I'm curious, are there resources out there? I know we're going to send around the workbook later. Are there places where you go personally to seek, I don't know, we're all public health researchers at some point, but like, where do you get your information? Where does some of the reflections and things that you put into your professional mind come from? And are there tools that we can use in addition to your website that would be helpful for everyone?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the best tool everyone has, is using their curious brain. And I'll give some hard tools first, but I think we default to our unconscious beliefs a lot, which is normal. No one taught us like, hey, you can question your beliefs. Where do they come from? How are they impacting you? But if you drop into your curious brain, you can do this. And many people already do. If you journal, if you sometimes in therapy, you experience this, that is your best tool. That is absolutely your best tool. And so where you can learn how to leverage that tool, I'll share my resources, but there's so many other coaches out there. I often promote them on my Instagram because I want to make sure folks, find a coach that's right for them. But I share stuff. My main way is my podcast or LinkedIn or my Instagram, I have my own coach. I truly believe in having someone to help you facilitate getting curious about your mind. Like that's really where a lot of this comes from. There definitely are books, right? Like Burnout, or right now I'm reading a book about the future of work and how we're attached to our work identity mentally and we can't shift that, right? Like there's so many books out there, but I don't think those books are powerful unless you engage your curious mind and like, how does this resonate with me? How do I apply this in my life? Is this what's helping me or hurting me? And I'd also encourage, if you start examining your thoughts, to ask this question, rather than is it true or not, is this belief helpful or not? Why or why not? Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that's wonderful. Thank you. Thank you. Any others have thoughts or feelings or reflections or anything you'd like to share with our wonderful public health community here? Michelle, I see you. Let me unmute you. Or you can unmute yourself maybe.
Yes,
perfect.
I think so. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah.
Marissa, thank you so much for doing this. I'm going to take my video off so you can see me too. I really, I'm challenging my own thoughts here. My question for you is, challenging my own belief systems is one thing. That's a big challenge in itself. What advice do you have if you perhaps have a supervisor who also holds those beliefs pretty strongly and has the whole idea of, you're not productive unless you've done X, Y, and Z. And, we all, I think, have those types of people in our lives. And so I think coming to terms with it in your own life is one thing. I think an even bigger challenge might be, how do you help others around you, specifically those who are perhaps supervising your work, to also hold those beliefs differently?
Yeah, that's a great question. This comes up a lot, right? The truth is you can't make them change. That's just the hard truth. As much as we like to believe that we can, we don't have direct control over that. There might be things I say or do or someone else does that trigger someone to think differently or question their practices. But at the end of the day, we don't have control over whether other people change. But I want you to think about this. If someone has these unconscious beliefs that productivity matters more than rest, or that they're like a servant, a public servant first in public health, and they go ask their boss for PTO and it's denied. If they're carrying those unconscious beliefs with them, how are they asking? And what do they do after it's denied? Not as a blame, but just to see, like, how would they interact with that experience and face that challenge, and what would they do and how would they feel? Versus someone who maybe has done some work to undo these beliefs, truly believe that rest is important, and they're not a servant to the public, that they're choosing to be in this job and they've done good work and they're going to rest and it's going to be the benefit of the whole organization. When they go in to ask, how are they asking differently? And if they get told no, how does that change their experience of that? Do they do things differently? Do they feel differently about that no? Because that's where our power lies. Even if your boss says no, if you had the power to experience that from a place of, well, that they're wrong and I'll figure out how to get rest, or I'm not going to take this personal, or I'm not going to get overly frustrated because that will burn me out, versus facing that no and going on kind of that loop of like, this is a dead end, I picked the wrong career, they don't care about me. That emotional experience changes dependent on your thoughts going into it. So even though you can't change someone else, you have more control on how you experience those challenges and those barriers emotionally by what you're thinking and what you're telling yourself. Because that's what feels so terrible, is the thoughts and feelings we're having as we experience those challenges. Does that answer your question, Michelle?
Yes, that's very great. Good advice. Thank you.
Yeah, so I'll just address some of the comments in the chat. So Kim said, definitely going to move forward with scheduling rest in my planner, not just tasks. So here's like a tactical thing. in my calendar each week, the first things I schedule are rest. Absolutely. I schedule my lunch, I schedule my breaks, I schedule when I'm ending work, first thing. And I'm not perfect at it, but I just want you to think about, if you did that, even imperfectly, what message that sends to your brain. Just ponder that. You're not going to be perfect, but that's a message in and of itself that you then internalize.
Great. Well, thank you, Marissa. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise and wisdom with us. It's just about 8 p.m., so I'm going to close this out unless we have any other lingering questions for Marissa.
And folks, feel free to contact me if you have questions or whatnot. I realized I didn't put my email on here, but my email is on these different places. Or if this really resonated with you and you're like, I get this and I want help, reach out. We can talk about what coaching would be like and how that could potentially help you. I mean, I have a coach. I've had one for years. I've had different ones. I think it's the best investment of your time and of your money to invest in your mind, which is like the greatest asset you have in your life.
Absolutely. And you provided us with some things to think about. And I already see people in the chat mentioning how they're going to implement these ideas. So yeah, definitely check those out if you haven't already, Marissa. We just got another one too. So can we get a virtual round of applause for our incredible presenter, Marissa McCool? Thank you. Yeah, I like the clap emojis too. For those of you not on video, thank you, Marissa. So just some items to send you away with this evening. We will send a follow-up email to participants tomorrow with the event recording and the worksheets that Marissa has alluded to in her presentation. To see more events like this, please check out our Recharge Your Public Health Career series. The next program is titled New Year, New Career, and it's scheduled for January 2022. Sounds weird to say, but it's coming. So please be sure to follow RSPH Alumni on Instagram, Facebook, LinkedIn for more great programming like this. And if you're interested in joining RSPH Alumni Ambassadors, connect with us on Facebook or email Laura for more information, and we'll be happy to get you connected. Don't forget to check out McCool Coaching on Instagram or subscribe to her podcast. I too have listened to a few of them and they're great. Check your inbox tomorrow for tomorrow's follow-up email to build on this presentation. And thank you, everyone, and have a great evening.
Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you giving some of your time tonight.
Thank you. See you all
Thank
soon.
you.
Bye. Thanks, Marissa.